Alright, so this tutorial we're going to go through setting up and rendering in Revit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off by just drawing a simple room. So I'm just going to go, we'll make this about 13 by 10. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a curtain wall. Oops. Okay. So if we go and generate a 3D view here, Alt. Alright, so we can come over here and we can just quickly create curtain grid lines. We can adjust these later. Alright, and then let's create some mullions. Mullion all. Okay. Alright, and so then we're going to create a floor. And I'm going to go ahead and just have this thing rest on a slab. Alright, and then we're going to do a ceiling. Well, you can't see it, but if we go into our ceiling plan, it's probably a little bit too high for that as well. You can set the ceiling height to tab through. Let's set this to okay. And it looks like we're a little bit off. And if we want to, we can come in here and we can make a bunch of adjustments. So once we have the interior space set up, we want to go ahead and set up a camera. So let's go to our view, 3D camera, draw this in plan. Alright, I'll zoom out a little bit and I'm just going to pull this over and pull this down. So we can now see our room. Obviously I didn't do a fantastic job setting this up, but basic ceiling. I didn't load any families in here for this this type. And what we can do is we can also come in here and talk about loading some lights. So let's insert load a family, lighting, internal, let's do a downlight spot, open. Architecture component to place it. We need to place a couple of these guys in here. Okay, let's go back to our perspective. We can see those in there now. So now if we go in here and render, we can look at the render settings. There's a couple of things we want to pay attention to. First, we're going to be setting it up to draft initially. We can pull this down to best if you guys actually want to do a finished rendering. Although if you're doing rendering in Revit, you'll probably render in the cloud. We're going to do screen resolution, since this will probably be for what you guys are doing, would be a PowerPoint presentation, but you can set the printer resolution if you do end up needing to take this to print. Under lighting, what you're going to need to do is essentially answer the question of what it is you're rendering. If you're doing a building, then you're going to be rendering the exterior. And if you have artificial lighting and you're doing like a night render, then you can go ahead and set that up. If you have it happening during sunset, you can leave both the sun and the artificial lighting on, or you can just leave one or the other. Since we're on the interior here, we're going to go ahead and just do interior, sun and artificial. And I'm going to show you some issues that we have with the way that I constructed my curtain wall. And then we can go artificial lights, and we can see how these things would organize. And if we wanted to, we could create new groups for the lights in the different spaces. This is to set it up so that you guys can control what lights are going to actually be on in the scene that you're rendering. Because for every single light that you have on, the software is going to have to do a lighting calculation. So you want to turn off the lights that aren't actually going to be a part of the room or a part of the environment that you're trying to render. Okay. Pick whatever sky you want to have. I'm going to go no clouds, and then you probably will never use this haze tool. It's basically from clear to crappy. And then we should be able to just do a quick test render. And this will take a couple of seconds here to render out. I'll edit out all the extra time. Alright, and so if you look at this, it looks pretty terrible. When we did our glazing panels, you can see that because it's a curtain wall, I didn't actually apply a type of glazing to it. That's created a problem, so I'll need to go ahead and manage my materials. So if we go to manage materials, let's go find our glass. So you can see our glass is actually not glass. And so we can go ahead and see if we can open an existing library. I'm not going to go track that down. Let's just come in here and edit the transparency of this. Alright, so that's looking a little bit better. Let's see, this is just a sphere. Alright, let's hit apply. And let's set this to realistic. Okay. Let's re-render that. Alright, so that's looking a lot better. We got our lights on and our sun on. And if we need to change some of the settings in here, we can click on the sun setting, and we can actually, if we click on still, we can set the time of day. So we can set this to early in the morning. We can give it a location just like you can in Studio Max. Alright, we'll hit apply, hit OK. And we can re-render this. So once we do that, though, we can also come in here and make adjustments. Say we want to do this as an evening render, or we just care about the interior. We set this to artificial only. You can see it will update. And right now it's not giving us any of the reflections because we have this set to draft. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and render in the cloud. So we'll render this out, and we'll just hit continue. You guys can read through this. Save the project we need to save. Delete me. That's an appropriate name. Alright, so let's render that in the cloud. Continue. Alright, so it's going to ask us to select the view. We can set 3D view 1. That's the we want this output as a still. We can do final quality. Let's do 2 megapixel. Now you have a couple options here. For exposure, if you use advanced, then that'll use essentially an in-place lighting setup, so it'll automatically load in. Or if you use native, it'll use the native settings. And then file format will just do a JPEG. But if you do PNG, that's for online or for PowerPoint presentations. JPEGs are for print, and then TIFFs are for whatever your pleasure. Alright, and we'll go ahead and hit start rendering. And you can just hit continue in the background. I'll wait for this to post back. And then I'll go ahead and edit out some of the results here. But this is essentially how you guys are going to set up the lighting for your interiors. And if we go here, I'll show the model, we can select these lights that we've loaded in, and these are all preloaded families that you guys should have access to and got installed. If you pull this down, you can see there's different controls here. We can set the voltage, which will affect the lighting temperature on some of these things. So if you guys load different families, you can do different things. You can install wall sconces, table lamps, a whole array, any light that you can imagine already exists in the modeling software. So you just dump these guys in. And even though I don't really prefer to render in Revit, I prefer to render in Studio Max. Once you modeled everything in Studio Max, you can link the model into the Revit model into Studio Max so that you can render there, and that'll also import all the lighting schemes, everything that you had in there, all your materials. So if you just set all that stuff up in Revit and then bring that into Studio Max, you can have a much easier time developing that final presentation. All right, let's see. That was a pretty simple basic render. So once you're done with this, you're just going to select the render gallery. And I'm just going to think about this. Now I've already had a couple of these renderings already render out, so if it's not ready, we'll go ahead and just take a look at a different one. All right, and so this is our rendering of final quality. And it's still in progress, but you can see we actually have the reflections of the room. The lights are coming in. Our glazing is actually reflecting the way that we would want it to. And so I'll go ahead and just pull up the other scheme here that we did. And this is what we did in class before. So you can see the acoustic tiles, ceiling. We have the can lighting, along with the curtain wall in the room, and our painted walls. And so just so I can review how to cover that as well, or how to do that, sorry. So we'll go to show the model. Select this. Let's open up the perspective on this. And then if you go into the Modify tab, with nothing selected, we can do the paint. And if you have a material set up, we can come in here and set one of these up. So I'm going to go and manage materials. And we'll go ahead and just create a new material. Appearance. Nice blue. Pull down the glossiness. And then we'll set this to wall. Alright, and so that's what it'll look like. So hit apply, hit OK. And then if we come back to our modify tool, paint by material, select our guy, and then we can just select all the surfaces. And you can see that that's going through. And so what we can do then is I'll just set this to best, assuming that that's what we want to do. I'll pull this down, and we can do a final rendering. And let's just re-render that. Alright, and so this is going to take some time. When you guys are rendering, this is going to completely lock up your machine. It's going to use all the additional RAM that's available. So that will disable any other processes on your machine. So this is the real advantage of the cloud. This takes about 1.5 minutes in the cloud. This will probably take 10 minutes on the machine, and then it renders the machine completely unusable during that period of time. So I can't do anything with my model, and I can't do anything versus just porting that up to the cloud and then being able to render that out quickly. All right, and I'll go ahead and come back when this is done, but essentially that's everything you guys need to know for the rendering.